Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you for being here. Actually, this has been quite a day. Something like 10,000 people marched on Wall Street earlier today. And what was interesting about it was Kevin Keating, one of our cinematographers in the film, who's hoping the film does well so he can get paid eventually. Kevin went down to Wall Street. I came here and found, as he got to Wall Street, one person wearing a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, and of course mic'd for video, a Tea Party representative. So we'll have to see how the coverage plays itself out tomorrow, and whether or not the coverage is 10,000 people marching against Wall Street, one half of the coverage, and the other half, there's one individual for fairness and balance will get equal time to everyone else. I wouldn't be surprised at all. So this issue, when I started working on it, it was sort of a difficult issue to sell because people don't like to talk about money. People are in denial about the problems we're having. When I made In Debt We Trust, I was told, "Danny, what's wrong with you? Your apartment has gone up in value. Are you some kind of doom and gloomer? Are you an alarmist?" And that was the rap until, 6 months later, the economy melted down. Suddenly, I went from being a zero to being a hero. "You're a prophet. How did you know?" And I wasn't the only one who saw these terrible signs of a growth in debt and a way in which our economy had been sort of captured by the finance industry through a process called financialization. So I've made this film and a companion book called The Crime of Our Time to document my claims. And I have to say that even to this day, to this hour, to this minute, the narrative in our media and in our government, left and right, Republican and Democrat, is somehow this was a terrible mistake. Risk models were off. Some of the smartest people in America somehow blundered, into miscalculation. They thought real estate would go up, but it didn't. And as a result, everyone was responsible. Therefore, no one was responsible. Therefore, there were no crimes committed. And in fact, the argument that there were crimes at all flies in the face of changes in our laws, which at sort of decriminalization of the financial world. After the S&L crisis, 1,000 bankers went to prison because of fraud charges in America. So far, no bankers really have gone to prison in this particular situation. So I began to feel there's something out of whack here. When I was at ABC News, I did the first primetime story on the S&L crisis. It was called "If You Want to Rob a Bank, Own One," and it was about the looting actually of a S&L in Seattle, Washington, and it was one of the first stories to show what was happening, which later became a gigantic political and economic issue. And I remember the fights I had with my bosses at ABC to even cover it, because they said, "Danny, haven't you heard of the expression me go?" You know what I'm talking about? My eyes glaze over. If you talk about economics or anything with any level of complexity, you have to assume the audience will tune out and will not be interested. And as a consequence, unless you find a way to do it that's compelling, you're not going to get the ability to do it. And this is one of the problems. This is why independent media is so important, and we're really honored. Adelaide Gomer is here. The Park Foundation has been one of our funders and has been a big funder of Bill Moyer's, whose last program is tomorrow night, and who I really hope you'll watch it, because Bill is sort of a, how should we say, an institution, a legend in our business, and a role model for people like ourselves who, have seen him go from, sort of the White House, to a critic of power in America. And so our tradition of journalism is an investigative tradition. It's to try to tell stories that aren't being told, and to do so in a way, hopefully, that can engage an audience. And Gary's company, we're very pleased, put this out on DVD. We don't have the big bucks needed to go get into theaters, but we are doing an outreach effort, and I've been in a lot of media, and to my surprise, the first newspaper, major newspaper, to call me was not the Guardian in England. It was the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch's Wall Street Journal. And they did a big spread, said this is the anti-Wall Street film that's not just for Michael Moore fans. And I was really pleased by that, because it's not intended to be. Because fraud and crime is something that free market libertarians oppose, as well as more people on the left. Yet the narrative of crime is not a narrative that's very conspicuous in our media. And it's not something that's debated or even discussed in many instances. But yet, when you saw the hearing of Goldman Sachs earlier this week, you saw protesters in the back of the room wearing prison outfits. Because to ordinary people, this seems to be a common sense that this has been a crime against them and has resulted in the loss of jobs and the loss of 14 million homes in foreclosure. The scale of this thing is dramatic. 1 out of 4 homes in America are now underwater, people paying more than they're worth in order to have a roof over their head. This is a desperate situation, and unfortunately, the CEOs get a lot more attention than the people who have been victimized by their decisions. And that's one of the reasons we made the film. So thank you so much for coming.